So it is, let's see, it is 7:33 on the 12th of January, 2023, and call the Housing Committee meeting to order. One note, Connie, since you're taking notes today, I don't know if you've been putting in the minutes the timestamp of each topic change or agenda item, but I know Duncan had requested that that's just a little bit easier. If you wouldn't mind, as we work through the agenda, to just put a little timestamp in there.
I will do that. Okay.
Just note the time. All right, so let's, we should have posted online the December 14th meeting minutes. And I just want to see if there's any changes or adjustments in the meeting from, in the minutes from last meeting.
I don't have any, but I wrote them, so, you know.
Okay. That's good.
Perfect. Well, we'll accept the meeting minutes as written. Moving forward, adjustments to the agenda. So the agenda was posted. I don't know, Gina and Patty, did you see that online? Okay, it is on the town website. I have a way to easily share it this evening. But are there any items, since we have some members of the public here, that you have any comments on the agenda? Anything you wanted to out?
Is this like in the select board meeting where you just make a comment, you know, like out of the blue?
Sure. Honestly, we have not had very many guests join us. So, you know, tonight is the agenda. We're getting some background review from Virginia on short-term rentals here in Richmond and Jolina Court. And so we'll be just hearing some of that update and background here in Richmond on those items.
And usually what you add, Mark, is a line that says, are there anybody who want to make a comment of things that are not on the agenda? So I think maybe that was what Patty was referring to, because both the Planning Commission and the Select Board have an item that says, if you're a visitor and you want to make a comment that's not on the agenda, this is a good time to do it. Otherwise, if you want to make a comment about things that are on the agenda, you're going to wait for the item. So do you want to make a comment about something not on the agenda?
Sure. I don't think this is on your agenda. I just, I've mentioned this to you and Connie, as we are thinking about affordable housing. I know that the Town Center Committee, in going through all the iterations of, are we going to build a new building? Are we going to renovate this old building? You know, making those decisions, they had to think about, well, if we were going to build a new building, where would it be? And the only place that the town owns land that would accommodate a building that size would be Brown's Court. And so that was part of their thinking, you know, well, what would that cost and what would that look like and how would we park and so forth. And it occurred to me that if they were thinking about Brown's Court as a place to build something, I believe it's about 4 acres, that could be a possible place that we could, as a town, like offer up to Champlain Housing Trust or something like that. I have no idea what this all involves. It's probably, but anyways, I mean, I know we've done other projects with those nonprofits, and I just was thinking we should think about that possibility of there, because it's on water and sewer and close to town services, and that this a possible place to have affordable housing.
Yeah, and I think actually that does tie in with the agenda. When we talk about Jolina Court, we're really talking about whether we could put increased housing there.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have the Far Farm property that we want to talk about. So the Jolina Court discussion is kind of like, what other places do we have that are connected to water and sewer in particular that could be used for either housing or affordable housing? So that lot would kind of fit in with that category of things. Those are the three places that we have that it might be possible to put some more housing or possibly some affordable housing. So it sort of fits in with that topic anyway.
Okay.
And, you know, that's
Great.
something that this committee can definitely take up is, do we want to look into what it would take for all these three different areas? And all of them, it would take a good amount of work, but, you know, that's something that needs to be looked into. What is the work? So.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to let you know that I'm going to have to get off at 7:30. I just wanted to be here at the beginning to be able to say that, and I want to just listen to what you guys are doing.
Okay. Great. Appreciate the comment. Thank you for bringing that up. I honestly wasn't aware of the Browns Court plot of land, but that's great. Any other comments?
Well, the school might have a problem with it. I mean, they do use those fields sometimes.
Mhm.
And, you know, obviously the neighbors would probably have a problem with it, but definitely worth looking into. So, yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Any other comments from the public not on the agenda? I think we're good. Okay. So moving on. In thinking about future areas where the housing committee can discuss possible places for more housing, affordable housing, etc. We wanted to get some background on two items that the town has been talking about a bit over the years. And one is short-term rental here in Richmond, and then Jolina Court. So Virginia, I will turn it over to you to
Sure.
provide some short-term rental.
Well, why don't we start with Jolina Court, since we've already started with this other piece about the lot up there at Brown's Trace. So Jolina Court is another place where more housing could go. Currently, what they are allowed to make is 45 units of housing. There's a 6-acre parcel. Everybody knows, obviously, where Jolina Court is. It's in the middle of the village. Half of their property is in the floodplain and half is above the floodplain. So they're really limited to the part that's out of the floodplain. So they're limited to 3 acres. They have the ability under the current zoning to make 45 units of housing, and they already have 14. So they can have another 31 units of housing. In the negotiations that were made about that piece of property, the ground floor was reserved for commercial space. So the history of the lot is that originally the town conceived of it as a place to expand the downtown. So this was, 15 years ago. More commercial space needed to be, people wanted to think about more commercial space to expand the scope of the village commercial district. The situation is now kind of changed. We're not focused so much on commercial space. So the question, one question is, should we alter the zoning to allow more units of housing there? It is a place that's on water and sewer. Revy, our previous town planner, felt that 90 units of housing could be put there, which was startling for most of us. For most of us who thought that the building that was put up with the 14 units already looked huge compared to the size of anything else in Richmond that was housing. However, we do have this housing crisis. This is a place that's on infrastructure. Do we actually need to reserve that ground floor of the next building or the next 2 buildings for commercial? That's one question. Can we put in more units? Could we go to 60 units, let's say? Could we, do we want to try to maximize that space? These are all questions that we need to talk about with people. because many people have an idea of what they would like the village to look like. We also talked about what amenities there would be. If we were going to have lots of apartments there, mostly rental, could be condos, but you can't just put a lot of apartments there without having some amenities for people. You know, it has to be a nice place to live. We have to consider it as a nice place to live. Affordable housing is very difficult there. The developer who owns that property and is doing the developer, Buttermilk, doesn't want to have anything to do with affordable housing. So it would require probably more effort than the town of Richmond could put in to making some kind of proposal or incentive that was enticing enough to Buttermilk to want to do any kind of affordable housing, but possibly more housing. So, and I'm talking about affordable in the technical sense of affordable rather than just what we all want, which is housing that people can afford to buy or rent. So that's one place that we could look into whether we want to have more housing there. And
Happy New Year, everybody.
hello.
Hi, my name is Manu. I like the Washington Artist Show.
Okay. This is a housing committee meeting.
It's nice to learn how housing is built and how is mortgage is paid.
Manu,
Great.
do you live here in Richmond?
I live in Alexandria, Virginia.
Okay.
Hmm.
Do you have any
Okay.
ties here to Richmond?
Yeah, I played Special Olympic out in Richmond.
Great.
I played basketball, soccer, the track and field with my whole team.
Great.
Manu, are you talking about Richmond, Virginia?
Richmond, Virginia.
Okay.
Okay, so we're in Richmond, Vermont.
Well,
So I think you might have the wrong number here that you've dialed into.
Vermont is really nice.
Yes, Vermont is nice. Yeah. So we're going to go on talking about housing here in Vermont. I don't know if you may or may not be interested in that, but we've got some things to talk about housing.
I like to learn about housing.
Yeah,
Great.
okay. So we'll carry on talking about it and you can listen in. Okay, so yeah, Patty.
So I'm just wondering, has the select board or has the planning commission, I don't know who, I think it's the select board who is the final say on things. I don't know. How many housing units have been approved for Jolina Court already? And how many, and would they have to ask the town to build more?
Yeah, so they have permission to build 45 units of
Okay.
housing. And then the ground level and this is in 2 buildings. They've submitted an incomplete application to planning and zoning for the second building that involves 31 units of housing and commercial space on the ground floor. The application is incomplete. It's not being considered so far because they still have needed to submit other things. So if they wanted to have in total more than 45 units of housing, the zoning would have to change, or there would have to be some kind of special arrangement made with the select board.
Oh, so it sounds like there is leverage there then, eh?
Well, there's a certain amount of leverage. There's no
Yes.
leverage really for the 45 units.
Mhm.
That's done.
Yeah.
They can have those if they get their Act 250 permit. That's another thing that they have to get. Besides a zoning permit
Mhm.
by submitting their information and their plans and all that kind of stuff. So, yep. So that effort would require, if we wanted to pursue more units there, that would require either a zoning change or some special deal. So maybe leverage. I mean, so far they've been willing to work with what they've got so far. They had been discussing with Revy having more units, but they had never really applied for it or really, put it into any kind of a formal plan. So anyway.
I brought a research it was an evaluation of Burlington's housing scheme of, and I can't remember the exact percent, but all developers had to, if they were building more than so many units, they had to have a certain percentage of the housing units be affordable housing in the city of Burlington. And then they did a study after that. What were the consequences of that for the city? And they were really, really positive. And I could try to get that study again for you guys, because it was a write up in the newspaper, and they did a bunch of research about it. And I'm just wondering, I brought that to the select board many years ago, like 10 years ago. Maybe it's not that long ago, and just said, can we think about doing that whenever buildings are, when developments are happening, that a certain percentage would be affordable?
Yeah, and it only really works for big projects.
Mm-hmm. This seems like a big project.
Well, and it only works if the developer is interested in it. Because people wouldn't build here otherwise. If you were required for a certain number of units, so for 100 units, it's worthwhile for a developer to put, let's say, 10 as affordable. For 30 units, it's not worthwhile for them to put in affordable units. They wouldn't do it. They just wouldn't build here. So, the buttermilk will do what it can do rather than applying for, as far as we know, rather than applying for extra units. So we have thought about that, and we worked on that for quite a while on the Planning Commission about actually requiring affordable housing units. And all the advice that we got and the planning information that we got and developers, it requires a lot of units. And we just don't have that many places where you can put in that many units on water and sewer. Anyway, so that seems like a pretty much of a long shot, being able to do that, being able to actually require it. So that, the advice is to make it, incentivize it somehow, to use leverage, if you want to use that word, but to incentivize putting in affordable units with some kind of tax breaks or, bonus units. If you want to be able to get even extra units beyond the zoning, you can use that as an incentive. But to actually require it, you're just not going to get people to do it. They're going to go build somewhere else. So anyway, so that's the situation with Jolina Court, and what it seems to require is either, so we're without a town planner right now. We're interviewing people to be a town planner, but Revy had taken this on and approached Jolina Court and engaged in the discussion about the number of units. Without having a planner here to do that, then either the Planning Commission has to take that on, the Housing Committee has to take that on, the Select Board has to take that on. Somebody has to go to this developer and try to determine how feasible it is to think about giving them more units. And then, a major discussion has to happen with the community about whether that's something that we want to do. So that's the Jolina Court situation, which, in a way seems like the best bet for more housing, whether it's likely to be affordable? It seems not. So the second place that we have been considering is the FAR parcel, which, if everybody knows where that is, it's down just beyond the Round Church complex. And half of it is in the floodplain, and 30 acres or so is up out of the floodplain. What that involves, and that is located at the end of a water and sewer line. So it would be possible to extend the water and sewer out into that area to put mixed use or housing. So far, so what that involves mostly right now is talking to the FARs to see if they are interested in doing some master planning there, if they're interested at all in thinking about developing that area. So far, our discussions with them, they want to keep it as a farm, and they want to keep their dairy options open, and they don't think that housing and dairy go well together as neighbors. That's their feeling. So this involves an outreach effort to them to find out what they actually want to do with the farm. It's the younger FARs that are the owners of that farm now. So that also is something the Housing Committee could engage in, the Planning Commission could engage in, the Select Board, you know, someone who is motivated to think towards the future. You know, it might not be right now, but there are grants out there for master planning efforts, and our thoughts were to see if we could get a grant for a master planning exercise, which involves hearings in the community, you know, public meetings with the landowners. They have to be interested in doing it. So the first step is really to reach out to them to see if they wanted to do that. So far, they have expressed a lot of interest. The only thing they have said they wanted to put there was self-storage, which makes a good neighbor to dairy, I guess. So that is something the Planning Commission has been wanting to work on. Maybe the Housing Committee would like to work on it. It's going to take like one-on-one outreach, I'm sure, with the FARs in order to even scope out whether or not they're interested.
So that parcel is or that farm's up for discussion basically because we're at the end of water sewer line and it's undeveloped land, not that
Exactly.
they've expressed interest in doing anything other than self-storage.
Yes.
Okay.
It's because it's one of the few pieces that is contiguous to the water and sewer or part of the water and sewer district. And the goal right now is to try to maximize density in areas that have water and sewer.
Okay. And just
Excuse me. Go.
Yeah, go ahead, Patty.
And one of the reasons that, you know, I know that that is a huge concern of farmers. My neighbor, who's a farmer, that has been the major worry. It's never been a problem, but it's a major worry that they have. They really want to be good neighbors, and they're great neighbors. But when Jeff worked on methane projects throughout the state, that was the main reason the farmers wanted to put in methane digesters, because it would eliminate the smell. And potentially that might be the route to help them know that if that's the concern, if it's the smell that's the concern, which I'm guessing that it is, that you know potentially they could, you know, we could. There are lots of other programs out there for energy. I don't know, you know. I mean, I think that must be their concern. My bigger problem with having dairy, you know, we had a dairy operation right here at our farm, and the bigger problem was noise. You know, it's a noisy thing. It's like living next to a factory. But they really feel like it's the smell. But it'd be curious to know like what they feel the concerns would be of the neighbors.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that would be part of the whole research aspect of this, is finding out, you know, if they know what their goals are, if dairy is really what they think is going to be in their future, what the concerns are. If it's dairy, are there places that would be far enough away, you know, like up behind Richmond Terrace, or, you know, where it wouldn't be a concern? It's just there are many unanswered issues. They also have a parcel that's on the other side of the road out of the floodplain that's a couple of acres that could have some housing as well. So, you know, it definitely a process of really trying to investigate what their long-term plans are, and
Mhm.
you know, so and then there's your idea, Patty, about the field up there, and that would require also some research, you know, what many unanswered questions about that. So all of these things need a champion or a group of people who are really interested in this particular thing, who really want to go after it. We, on the planning commission, we talk about these things now and then other things come up, and we haven't pursued them to the depth that they need to be pursued at this point. So that may be a role for the housing committee. So anyway, so that's,
And say hello to Cecilia Danks, who joined us about 5 minutes ago, I think.
hello.
Hi, yeah, sorry, I was at the sing-along that I think Connie was at and just got home. I was just curious about what you're talking about, so I think I missed it, and I won't make you or won't ask you to repeat it, but I was curious about Jolina Court or other options for low-income housing.
Yeah.
In part
So-
because I don't know if I don't want to take over time, but just to explain, there's a bill that was passed last year, HR I think 720, pushed forward largely by a group of parents from around the state with adult children with developmental disabilities who are looking for housing alternatives for them. And Richmond Village would be a lovely place to have a few, you know, units, a few people living in a small group or something like that. So I'm just sort of exploring the options. We've had folks work with the planning department and developers in Williston, where there's obviously a lot more units being built. But I live in the village and it's lovely. So if there were some way to have a few units available, we're also working on what the services for them would be like. But the village is just lovely and walkable and has everything anybody could need. So I was curious about what was going on with Jolina Court.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing that I could mention is that in the amendments that we're currently putting forth to be adopted, we have added supported housing as a category of use, which wasn't in previous versions of our zoning. So that there will be that as a category of use in the village. Yeah, so anyway, so those were the three areas in the village: Jolina Court, the Far Farm, maybe the ball fields. Those are the three areas that are near enough to water and sewer. The other thing that's necessary in particular for affordable housing is public transit. And we don't have any public transit in Richmond. So this is why we've concentrated in the village area, because it is walkable. You know, obviously there's other parts of Richmond, the agricultural residential zone, the high density residential zone. There are other places where housing can go, and we haven't really worked on amending those districts at the moment. But they do suffer from a lack of transit, and transit, especially for affordable housing, is interested people who make grants, who give money to make affordable housing, want it to be transit oriented. So we don't really have any transit in Richmond at the moment. We're trying to get it, but it's also a big project to get anyone to want to do transit into these little towns. So anyway, so those are areas that the housing committee could work on. Those 3 areas where additional housing could go. The other topic that the planning commission has worked on and off, which cuts into housing, is the short-term rentals question. So we know we have at least 45 short-term rentals in Richmond. We need to have a community discussion about short-term rentals. Short-term rentals are detrimental for long-term rentals. And it's, we need to start on this. We haven't made any inroads into this at all. There are no regulations in Richmond about short-term rentals. Many other communities are grappling with it. It's not just a Richmond thing. So it is something that affects housing. It needs research, you know, we need to find out what people think, who's doing it, why are they doing it? Do they need to do it, you know, or to make money, or do we want to follow the path of requiring that people have to live in the houses that they do short-term rentals in to avoid the investment short-term rental problem? So that's another thing that needs significant amount of research, and then we could make some regulations about it. So anyway, those were the 2 things that the planning commission has been thinking about in terms of more housing. I'm sure if we brainstorm, there are other things that we could think of about what the housing committee might want to take up.
That
After,
sounds like plenty.
go ahead, Patty.
That sounds like plenty, you know,
Yeah,
that's
it's
great.
plenty.
You got a great start there.
Yeah, it's a good list, you know, it's our short list. The other thing that we have kind of mostly done is the amendments to the village neighborhoods. So we did a lot of outreach when we first started to do the zoning revision to make it comply with the 2018 town plan. We did a lot of outreach into the neighborhoods. The neighborhoods are very, very fiercely defensive of their density that they have now. So we kind of backed off a little and we went to these other districts, the residential commercial districts, because the resistance wasn't so fierce to having an increase in density. But we need to come back to looking at those neighborhoods again and decide if we want to stick with what we already decided. We did make the ability to have slightly smaller lots, so that allows for increased density. And right now, we're working on allowing multiple residential buildings on the same lot. We haven't put it in the neighborhoods. That's another discussion that will have to happen, but we're proposing to put it into the districts that we're working on right now. So if it goes through in the districts we're working on right now, which had a moderate amount of success, we might be able to allow that in some of the neighborhoods. We don't know. Anyway, so that's another place that we can go that relates to housing, because it's all about trying to gradually increase the density of housing and allow there to be more houses. And when you have more density, you have more likelihood of having transit. So anyway, that's something that the planning commission probably will be doing on its own. If we need support from the housing committee on that, then, you know, we can do that the way we did the support, the good support that we had from the housing committee for the districts that we're working on right now, where we're increasing the density. So that was good. We can do that again with the neighborhoods when we see how much infill we can achieve there.
It seems as though if you move slowly, like you're doing, you know, one area at a time, then people can see that the sky doesn't fall, and move slowly again, so people don't think things are being jammed down. You know, there's clearly urgency in terms of housing, but I don't think you can address it in an urgent way, unfortunately.
No, I mean, it's like climate change. You just can't make it happen any faster than people are ready to move. So we try to mobilize. I mean, you know, we have people who work in the affordable housing world here, Molly Dugan and Miranda Lascazzi, who are willing to come. Sometimes they're not willing to give their time to be on this committee, but anyway, to help out with the public outreach. And I think that does make a difference. I think it's important for people to hear, people who work in the world where people don't have places to live, you know, to talk about how we could increase our density a little bit.
Yeah.
So anyway.
I'd like to ask Cecilia if she would say again what the act was that was related to supported housing, because I didn't catch it correctly when I tried to look it up. No, you have to unmute, remember.
Yes, I have to unmute. I think it was H 720.
Oh,
I might have said it wrong.
that's okay.
I didn't have it in front of me before, H 720, and part of it has $500,000 for implementing pilot program. So I don't know if that could go towards those kinds of incentives you were mentioning might convince people to allocate some units.
Yeah.
Governor Scott had some problem with the final version of it. He let it pass into law, but there may be a revision to it early this session.
Okay. It's a population, it's a group of people that I think gives people to think differently about housing. I mean, I think everybody needs housing. Don't get me wrong, but I'm intrigued by the opportunity to have it. In a sense, it's a combination of a business and a housing for people who need housing. And I think there's I think that Richmond could be a great potential model for something like that. So I don't know anything really about it, except that it's a different kind of approach. And I think it could be meaningful and extremely valuable to people who require support as well as housing. So thank you for pointing it out. I see that it was passed into law as Act 186. And so there's probably plenty to look at and work at and think about this, but thank you, Cecilia. I appreciate that.
And it's got to be affordable, right? You're talking about housing that is subsidized in some manner.
I haven't read the act yet, but I will take a look at it and see more about what it says. I kind of wanted to be able to find it first, and I did just find it, so that'll help me.
Yeah, in my conversations with other folks, particularly those working in Williston, they seem to think it would have to be affordable. Most of our kids get Social Security, developmental disability from Social Security, and they have to have so little money that they're basically in the severe, the lowest income category.
Yeah. So they would qualify for affordable housing.
Definitely, yeah. So there's I'm reading the summary right now, and there's the Department of Disabilities, Aging and Independent Living is expected to submit a report on January 15th of this year. That would be in 3 days. That will explain more about how they intend to implement it and support it. So there's more to be learned about this, but I think it's a significant issue and one that could definitely take advantage of the kinds of changes that we're thinking about and provide a tremendous benefit as well. So I just, I'd be glad to read up on it. And Cecilia, if you've got information, what I'll do is put my email address in the chat. And then if you want to contact me that way, you're welcome to, although there's no obligation to do so. So that's me.
I said, yes, I would love to, but I was muted. I was looking at the minutes from the December meeting, and it sounded like somebody was reporting on a needs assessment, and I was wondering where to get a copy of that, or is that completed? Because part of that bill and also something our parent group did was a sort of a needs assessment for folks with developmental disabilities. And I just wanted to see what the needs assessment for Richmond looked like and whether there was something we could add. But if you already have supported housing in there, that's a great goal.
I'm happy to share the housing needs assessment that was done a year ago. If you want to reach out to Connie, she can get my
Okay.
information over there. And I can
Hold
chat
on,
to
so
it.
what am I getting? Just sorry, I was
Yeah, I'll
thinking. Tell me again, which needs assessment is this?
The housing needs assessment, the inventory that was done.
I
Oh,
can
that the
send
intern
that.
did. Yes, that the intern did. And you've got it, Mark? You could send it
Yeah,
to him?
I can send that over. If you want
Thank
to give me your
you.
address, Cecilia.
Sure, I could put it in the chat.
That'd be great. Thank you.
And one of the other things that I guess we need to do is update that. Are we ready to, I mean, has it been a year since, well, it hasn't been a year since the intern worked. It's been,
Well, we have the one Brandy did.
right, that must have been a year.
That was a year,
Yeah.
Yeah,
about a year.
so, yeah. Anyway, that's, should be probably on our list at some point to update that. Although the intern kind of updated it, right?
Yeah, she did. Yep.
Updated it for
Yeah.
the whole end of
Right.
2021 or 2022, anyway.
2022, as much as she had. So it's pretty up to date right now.
Yeah, okay, good.
Virginia, one question for you back to Jolina Court.
Yeah.
The 45 units that they have approved so far today, have they expressed any interest in terms of like breaking ground or moving forward with those additional units?
They have an incomplete application in at
Okay.
the moment to the planner who's gone now, but so to the DRB, they have an incomplete application. They haven't submitted all the materials they need, and they will need an Act 250 permit before they can break ground on that building. They were supposed to have a master plan which detailed all the buildings that they were going to build, which they did. They had sort of a master plan, but then they changed the master plan. So it's been difficult to actually pin them down to a master plan. But they do have plans for building number 2 with 31 units. When they get their application complete and the engineering is submitted and all that kind of stuff, then they could, well, then they have to get the Act 250 permit. So it's going to be a while.
Okay.
Which is why, Revy thought we could continue this discussion about having more units because they aren't ready to build this building yet. They have expressed an interest in building it, but they don't seem to finalize it and move right along with it. So, and then there's the question, if they build that building, if we just don't do anything, and eventually we assume they will get all their application in and they will get their Act 250 permit, maybe, we don't know how that's going to go. In their original master plan, they had 4 buildings. And if they put 31 units in the second building and the zoning continues as it is, they will not be able to put any more residential units. If they build another 2 buildings, they would have to be commercial buildings. And right now, people are saying, why are we requiring them to have more commercial space? Because we have commercial space in Richmond that isn't full. Maybe we don't need any more commercial space and we should let them put in more residences if they build a 3rd and 4th building. If you drive around that property, it's really hard to see where you would fit 4 buildings, but I have seen a plan of where they originally had planned to put those extra 2 buildings. Pretty crowded, pretty cramped. And, if we have all those residences now, those dwelling units, the 45, do we really want to now put commercial buildings in there? I mean, maybe not really. Maybe we'd really rather put other residences in there. So that's why it should be an interesting conversation, and we should have it. You know, somebody should have it. We should work on it.
Great. I guess, Connie, any interest in any of those ideas in terms of being taken up by the housing committee? I mean, we could talk about that a little bit now, or maybe think about it and come back with our thoughts next session as to, of these items that Virginia outlined, is there anything that we as a housing committee want to take up?
I don't want to, I mean, I guess you're asking me to speak about my own ability to support explore something like that, and I'm certainly interested in the information Cecilia was referring to, as I'm somewhat familiar with people with needs like that, and I know that we have housing needs of all kinds to meet in this community. Some, you know, some of it is how easy is it? How well can we lay the ground for the work? And since I'm new to the topic of you know, been on the housing committee for a couple of years, but I haven't really become an expert in housing. So I'm still learning, and I think it'd be great to continue to have this conversation in this meeting to figure out what we all can do together. Because it's not necessarily, I don't think it's a one-person activity. I think it's a group activity to say, here's an idea that could be developed, how would it happen? And to kind of make it a team effort, not necessarily, you know, do you want a champion for this and a champion for that over there? I think I'd rather work together on a team that says, here's something that's needed that Richmond can supply that works and fits well, for whatever that means.
I agree. I agree with that. I wasn't asking in terms of like, hey, Connie, what do you want to take and run with? It was more of, as a committee, was there anything outlined that was of interest to take up as a committee, I suppose.
Okay.
Sorry I didn't want to
no,
you
that's
out
okay.
there.
That's okay. So, you know, Patty had a great idea that, you know, we could look at Bounce Court, and then there's Jolina, and then there's FAR. And then there's, you know, other kinds of buildings that could be used for longer term purposes than just say short-term rentals. But everything is really about what's the need and what's the fit. How do you make these things come together? And we'd have to talk to people, and we could do that as a group. You know, we could learn more about what the, you know, buttermilk is looking at and thinking about. I don't want to repeat history. I don't want to make people do things again. And I know the Planning Commission has done one whole heck of a lot of work, and as Virginia represents, to me at least, a tremendous amount of knowledge. So I'm trying to figure out how we can be useful and helpful with, you know, based on the knowledge that we're slowly accumulating as a housing committee. I guess that's my thought. I mean, we're learning as we're going. And I just say that to everybody here who's, you know, half of us are sort of from the public, but it's, you know, this isn't a simple thing, because if it was simple, it would have already been done. So we have to know what we're asking for and getting into, but there's clear needs, and we should be working as a housing committee on figuring out how to fit the need with the resources.
Nope, I agree. I mean, I think off the how what's outlined there, it sounds like the Jolina Court, because there is half a project already started. There is, you know, plans for future, which may be minor adjustments, right? That might be hard to make, but minor adjustments. There could be some of the most impact that we as a committee could have there sooner rather than later, versus development from, you know, like the FAR farm, which they haven't even expressed any interest in wanting to do any development there. Might be a longer term kind of project than something that's already in place.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so I mean, one thing that we might want to do is wait until we have a planner to help us. I mean, the committee is now so small that we either need more members or we need help from a planner, I think, to think about this and to try to make a plan about how we're going to approach it. For instance, do we want to try to have the buttermilk folks come to the housing committee meeting? I don't know that we want to do that as a first step. Do we want to, reach out to the community to see how they feel? We sort of need to make a plan about what the steps are and what the order is that we want to take those steps in. When the planning commission is finished with these current amendments, which we hope to be finished with either in this coming meeting or our following meeting, and they've moved on to the select board, then we're going to have this kind of discussion about what is the next thing we want to take up also. Do we want to take up any of these projects that we've talked about? Or do we want to, there's a bunch of other things that we have to talk about, cannabis, retail cannabis. And so, I don't know. I feel a little bit like we're maybe in a little bit of a holding pattern, but until we get a planner and find out what they can do, I mean, there's going to be a learning curve there, obviously. The new planner is to support the housing committee, the planning commission, the transportation committee. There's obviously going to be a learning curve. So it's a little mind-boggling to sort of make any real decisions now. I mean, I could reach out to Buttermilk and ask them what their plans are, but I'm not sure I want to do that yet.
Yep.
Somebody had a hand up, Patty.
Yeah, so I'm curious, you guys have been doing different zones with the planning commission. Is Jolina Court part of that? Is that a place that you're saying how much density can be there, and you're not in that zone?
No.
So I mean, the way capitalism sort of works is that, like they may or may not want to be building any apartments there. I mean, they may just be thinking sometime in the future, maybe we want some more units there and we want to have the ability to do that. I mean, can the new zoning, when you get to that district, and when you get to that, that'll be, I don't know when the planning commission will get there. Could it be at that point you just say this is what's allowed in that area, in the commercial area of the commercial residential area of Richmond? Can you make that like it's going to be okay to have 60 units there if you want to?
Yeah, I mean, well, we could do it at any time. I guess the hope was in doing it sooner rather than later to influence the design of the second building and to remove the requirement for the commercial, or at least to make the commercial be on only the front side of the building on the first floor and allow for residences on the back side. If we alter the second building at all, then we would need to do it before they finish their application for the second building. If we want to just give up on the second building and say, okay, it's going to be 31 units and commercial on the first floor like it is now, then that's fine. And then we could address it at some point down the future, down the road, when they might want to build building 3 or building 4. And then we could say, okay, by this point now we've changed the zoning. So the only reason to think about doing it sooner was to influence that second building. They're a little hard to work with.
I thought they were resistant to the commercial part because they weren't, it wasn't.
They were very resistant. They didn't want any commercial.
Right. So we don't really want commercial either. So
well,
awesome. We want more housing, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would say the housing committee wants more housing. However, there was a contingent that it was very hard to get housing allowed at all in that district. I don't know if you remember back.
I remember. No, I totally remember. It was a heavy bunch of select board members.
60% was to be commercial. We got it down, to 25% commercial, but Whether that sentiment has completely changed, obviously the atmosphere has changed around housing versus commercial space. So, but that's where the discussion comes in, are we willing to give up that commercial space for housing? Seems to make good sense, but it didn't make good sense at one time. So
Right.
it's a discussion that has to happen. It's some kind of community discussion that has to happen.
So Virginia, I know you are in support of the idea that we have a town planner, this becomes a lot easier to organize. But is there more that we can learn, or is there more that we can listen to? In other words, part of our job is to like soak in the information so that we can help provide the resources and the data and the information that the community needs to make, collective decisions. Is
Mhm.
there more?
Well, I did think, remember a long time ago, maybe when she was on this committee, Miranda talked to us about affordable housing. And that was at least a year ago, or maybe 2 years ago.
Mhm.
And I kind of would like to hear her talk again about affordable housing in Richmond and, what it actually needs. I mean, it's a complicated topic to understand. And I just feel like maybe we could benefit by listening to her again if we could come and get her to talk to us. Like if, or maybe we need to pursue, if the town owns, it would be ideal if the town owned a piece of land. Like in Heinsberg was given a piece of land and they put they're building affordable housing on it because that major big cost of the land acquisition was removed. So they could give it to a developer to develop without adding on the cost of the land. So if the town was really interested in this parcel up there near Brown's Court and making affordable housing out of it, then it might really be worth having someone like Miranda come and talk about if that could work, if the town now owns this piece of land that they have said they wanted to give, would that be some place that a developer could be attracted to put enough housing to make affordable units be worthwhile or entirely affordable?
Does Miranda work for like Champlain Housing Trust or something? Who is she?
Yeah, Miranda Lascazzi. Yeah, she works for Champlain Housing Trust.
So, I mean, I think, that was what I would have said the next move would be, is to contact someone from Champlain Housing Trust and ask them, how do all these towns jump over these, how does it work? It seems to me it's the political piece that's the most difficult. How do you work with the neighborhood that you're going to be building this affordable housing next to? How do they reach out? Like, how do you make these projects happen? If the town was willing to enter into some kind of agreement with Champlain Housing Trust, like, how would we do it? So, we know that any place that goes through any change around housing is always like this. I mean,
Right.
people don't like change where they live.
Yeah, but that's not the only problem. The other problem is the cost.
Mhm.
The developer has to be able to meet his or her costs. And it's difficult when you can't make the return on the investment.
Right.
If Champlain Housing wants to build, and that's what they like to do, they like to build their own building
That's
and
what I
own
think.
them and run them like Borden Street, the 16 units that Amy Wright made
Right.
when she was here on
Yeah.
the Champlain Housing. So, and we have had Miranda come and talk to us, and it was very discouraging. I found that, she didn't feel, well, first of all, you can't get Buttermilk to do it because Buttermilk wants to own their own properties. They don't want anybody else to own them. So that was kind of out. And the size of the projects was too small. They needed to be a bigger project. But if we actually found out from the select board or whatever that this piece of land might be possibly available, I mean, that might be the first step before asking Miranda, how would you go about doing it with all those neighborhood concerns? We need to maybe find out if you're thinking about that piece of land, what the reality is of that piece of land being available. I mean,
Who has the final decision on that? Like, I mean, is that something that like a town vote, or is that like
Well,
the select
I don't
board?
even know who owns that. I mean, whether the school
Yeah.
owns it, the school district owns it, whether the town owns it, if there's an easement on it, or, if you want to have a piece of open land up there as well, exactly how that parcel, I know nothing about the parcel. So that would require the first, I think, we'd have to find out from the zoning administrator, the select board, probably who actually owns that parcel, what, if anything, there are restrictions on that parcel, how it's used, did somebody dedicate that piece of land in perpetuity to be a ball field, or,
It seems to me the person that would be a good first person to talk to would be Josh, because Josh was on the town, this is on the town center committee and has gone through all of this process. The only reason I bring this up is that I know that a town sanctioned committee went through thinking about that as the possible place with the town center, which makes me think that we have a pretty good claim on it, as a town. But I don't know. But I would think Josh would know that, or they wouldn't have carried that conversation as far as they did.
yeah. Well, I could certainly ask him about that. I've got a bunch of things on my list to ask him about, and I could ask him about that. And he might know, or,
So something that we could do as a committee is that we could talk to individual select board members and just get a feel from them. I don't think it politically would be wise for them at a select board meeting to say, so would you like to do Brown's Court as a affordable housing place? They're not going to say yes because they don't know all the details either, but it'd be interesting to just kind of feel them out a little bit and see how people feel about that concept in an informal sort of way.
I like the way, Patty, that you said how we as a committee.
Yes, I picked up on that as well.
No, if I were to get on this committee, I'd have to leave another committee that I'm pretty invested in. But who knows? Maybe I will do that.
Well,
I mean, poverty has, poverty. Yes, I would like to see housing. More housing in Richmond. I think that's nice for more people to live here. But my interest is affordable housing. That's and I know that's an interest of many of you here. So if there was some way that I felt I could have an impact on improving affordable and growing affordable housing here, multifamily housing, reducing exclusionary zoning, and so forth. I'm all for it, and I won't make a lot of friends by doing that, I think, in many of these neighborhoods, but I just feel like it's just really important.
Yeah, it's the right thing to do. So, okay, well, I will talk to Josh about the ownership about that piece of
Josh or Jeff?
Josh.
Josh, okay, I thought you were gonna talk to Jeff. All right.
No, I talked to Josh and also asked him, if there's a way, what he would recommend as a process for continuing that conversation to wherever it has to go, including the select members.
Mm-hmm.
So I can start that. I mean, I'll do that. I'll be happy to do that.
Thank you.
So we have the real facts about that piece of land.
That'd be great.
Well, just noting the time here, we have a few other items on the agenda. probably should move on, but we can talk about some items that we maybe want to include on the next month's agenda here at the end, but maybe having Miranda or someone from Champlain Housing Trust come and talk, or just for the discussion on where might the Housing Committee want to focus with some of these options that Virginia laid out tonight.
And then the other person is Molly Dugan, who she has worked in affordable housing. She works in some capacity that's related to affordable housing now. I forget exactly, but she's a good spokesperson for promoting affordable housing and the need for affordable housing. So, she's a local expert that we might have come, and we haven't had her come and talk to us. So we can think about that.
That could be, yeah. All right. Moving on, update from the Planning Commission. Virginia, anything you want to add if you're the liaison to the Planning Commission as to what's going on with the Planning Commission?
Yeah, so we sent our 2 proposed districts, the Village Residential Commercial District and the Gateway Residential Commercial District. We sent the proposals that we're about to vote on out to the attorney for review. And I just got them back about half an hour ago from the attorney. So I have to look at that, and hopefully we'll be able to resolve any final issues for our meeting next Wednesday. The density issue and the residential and the multifamily doesn't seem to be a problem with people. We haven't had a lot of pushback in these 2 districts about multifamily housing. So that seems to be good. And then we have a few other issues, the Dunkin' Donuts question, which got so much publicity on the Front Porch Forum. It was like, wow, can we start conversations or what? Dunkin' Donuts. So, the chain store question is got a few things that we need to work out. But we're hoping either this meeting, the 18th, or the following meeting, we will approve that whole packet of amendments and send them off to the select board. And then we'll be done. The select board will have a public hearing process also. And we hope that people's concerns have been addressed in all the public meetings that we have had. We're not having a lot of comments anymore. We did originally have some comments about not increasing density in the village, but they sort of seem to settle down. So we're kind of hoping that people are more comfortable with it and are not going to go to the select board. But I will keep you all posted as to when that select board hearing is, in case we need people to go and continue to support those amendments at the the select board level public hearing. Hopefully it'll be fine. And then the Planning Commission is then going to decide what the next thing is that we're going to work on out of our long list of things to do. So that's the update.
Great. Thank you for that. All right, moving on, recruiting update. So I know at our last meeting, there were some names that were passed around about potentially wanting to or reach out to recruit to this committee. I don't know if
Yes.
some of the guests that we have tonight were also inspired to join just from some of those efforts, but Connie, Virginia, anything come about from that discussion, or any
No, I
potential
completely
member comment?
forgot to do the ones that I was
Okay.
going to do. So I'll try.
I heard back from Andrew Mannix.
Right.
And he said he'd love to be supportive on projects, but he can't be a committee member at this point. So he was interested. I did not hear back from Jackie Puchette. And Richmond racial equity members recommended I talk to other people, like going back to, I'm blanking on his name, who owns Black Fork?
Rod West.
Rod West, whom I had talked to over a year ago, and he nominated his wife, Kristen, who came for a while and then ended. So So I was sort of like, things are a little bit of a circle there, but I think there's a genuine interest in this. It's just everybody's super busy and it's really hard to get away, but everybody says, yeah, it's really important. But so far, I haven't talked to Rod yet. And I am, still trying to think about whom else we could ask for, but we should talk to our public members here at this meeting tonight. I mean, what do you all think?
Well,
Okay.
Patty already volunteered.
Yay, Patty. Cecilia, thanks for your
Yeah, I just typed in something.
that's great. Thank you so much. I'm glad you're interested, and it would be good to keep you posted.
Great, thank you.
I'm curious what kind of time commitment this would be.
We meet for an hour and a half once a month to be scheduled at the convenience of the membership. So it doesn't have to be on any particular day of the week. Mark's the chair and I'm the clerk. So you don't have to worry about being stuck with taking notes. And sometimes we do outreach work, and that usually looks like showing up at other meetings to listen and also to help talk and to gather facts and to share those with other people. Sometimes it's on Front Porch Forum, and sometimes going to like Volunteers Green during farmers market and just helping people notice that there's an issue that should be addressed. And those, they all have small impacts, but the idea is a lot of little pieces help people decide how to vote over time. And eventually these things become either everybody's in favor and the select board just helps it along, or it goes out to a vote at town meeting, and then the community expresses its collective wisdom that way.
Yeah, we've done efforts to just help the planning commission, when they had some public hearings about the zoning changes that Virginia just recently talked about. We joined those calls and provided our 2 cents there in support. And I think some of it is it depends on how much time you have to invest as well. So we might have a small kind of small subgroup that would research a particular project or to speak to some individuals or help brainstorm on something. But right now they're voluntary, right, from that perspective. So
Yeah, so it seems like I've been to a few different meetings where it seems like each committee is looking for people. Well, last night it was the recreation, like it just seems like everyone is looking for someone to help, and I have really thoroughly enjoyed just getting informed. And this is my first meeting with housing. I'm kind of just exploring all the committees and hearing. It's interesting because you don't function separate from each other. So even though you might be on one committee, you're still, I feel like, need to be working very closely with every other committee. So I will say I'm definitely interested. I'm definitely interested in getting more involved in some way.
That's great, Gina. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
Well, I did
but I'm just learning. I don't
Sure.
know anything. So I'm here like thinking, getting involved for me kind of means hearing what you're all saying. I just, listen, I don't have any real big input, but I like to hear what's going on. And I'm willing to help in whatever way I can.
Okay. Well, my email is the Mark P. Hall there address is in the chat. So feel free to jot that down. You can send me a note if you have any questions about the committee or want to get involved in more. I'm happy to chat with you more about that. I appreciate you joining tonight. Like I said, I think this is the probably most well-attended meeting we've had since I've been around, with other people outside from in the community joining. So thank you for showing up.
You all.
We
Really.
did get a $20,000 grant to have a consultant last
Yeah.
year, or maybe the year before, but
Uh-huh.
helped us, really helped quite a lot with the way the zoning eventually turned out. You know, we utilized a lot of her materials. So that was good. And that totally depended on the planner's efforts. You know, our planner got us that grant and it was super useful. And so we hope that we have a planner who's interested in reaching out to granting agencies and opportunities. There's a lot of money floating around Vermont right now. And it's just knowing how to get a hold of it and how to use it, and, you know, having enough people to have the energy to figure out how to make the best of that money. But the Regional Planning Commission is like a swamp with grant opportunities, and you just think, all right, all we need is people to go out and be willing to use these grants. So anyway, it's good. It's a good time.
Okay, well, let's keep that recruitment piece top of mind. I do have a neighbor that I've been working on as well, to see if she would be interested in joining. So we'll
Great.
keep that.
Thank you, Mark.
We'll keep that
Yeah.
in mind.
It's definitely the one-on-one that I think
Yep.
is the best results.
Yeah.
Will you continue to be doing meetings on Zoom? I mean, it's just really useful for somebody like me because I'm taking care of my daughter in the background. But we don't have to move back to entirely in-person meetings. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
And in fact, there's a bill that's been introduced in the Vermont legislature that will extend the period of totally Zoom remote meetings until July of 2024. So if that goes through, we can still all go on meeting remotely. Otherwise, we have to have at least one person at the town center, but everybody else can be remote. So yeah, it's been good, the remote, for people coming to our meetings. They can come because they don't have to get a babysitter or whatever. Yeah, they can be in their pajamas, you know, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Great. Well, that brings us to the next discussion topic anyways on the agenda, is the physical meeting room. So this is the last meeting under current state law where we can have a fully remote meeting. Our February 9th meeting, we do have to have a physical presence as of right now in the meeting room in town.
Or just one person has to be there.
Just one person has to be there.
Yeah, everybody else can be on Zoom.
Yes, so we would still host a Zoom, we still have a Zoom meeting open, but we would just have to have one physical person downtown. So I don't know, you know, I can be flexible there about meeting in person. I don't know if we want to do maybe right now we have 3 members, we want to do a rotation, or if it's super easy for you, Connie, and or Virginia to be down there, I don't know. But I can at least help rotate through, or we can enlist the services of, I think Duncan said he can just flip on a meeting and let it roll and be there as well.
So I can't be physically present in April for the April 13th meeting, but I can for February or March.
Okay.
So, and May would be difficult for me too, as I look ahead down the road a little bit. So I'd be happy to do next month, and then see where that gets us. And then, of course, by the time we get to summer, you know, we'll have to refigure this out anyway. But how about if I plan to be in the room on February 9th, and feel
Okay.
free to displace me if it's a better date for you all, any of you.
Okay. I mean, I could do March at the moment. And so maybe we could do, yeah,
Okay,
round robin, and we can cover those dates in April and May.
okay, thanks.
And is 7:30 a good time for people? I mean, we did it for Sarah Himes so she could put her toddler to bed, but I mean, would we rather meet at 7 or is 7:30 good? I mean, I don't really care one way or the other.
It's a little late for me, but I'm okay with it.
Do you
Yeah.
want to start at 7 to, is that better? I don't know. Is that, if that's better for you, Mark, or not? It makes absolutely no difference to me one way or the other.
Either one's in the middle of my kid's bedtime, so 7 works as well.
Is there a better time for you, Mark, given family stuff?
No, I mean, we could do, they're in bed by 8, but my wife is gonna be here anyways, or my mother stopped by this evening because my wife had a meeting as well this evening, but we can figure that out. So 7 would be fine for me too.
Shall we move it to 7 o'clock?
Yeah.
Okay.
not?
Okay.
Okie dokie, let me get that.
And when Sarah comes back, we can move it back to 7:30.
Right,
All right, so March 9th. Mark, you said you were going to be there.
I will be, we'll be,
You'll be there in February, right, Connie?
yep,
February.
yep.
Okay, Mark's there in March. I mean, I could be there in April, I suppose.
That would be March 9th.
Yes, March 9th, just like February. And then let's pick up again in April and see how we're doing.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be happy to be there in April if you want to set that up now, or we can think about it later. Let's see, it's the 13th, I think.
13th, Thursday the 13th. Okay. See, and move meeting time to start at 7.
Mhm.
Okay. It's in the notes, but Mark, do you want to let Duncan know?
Yep.
Okay.
I can do that.
And regarding the notes, Ravi used to be my copy editor, but cannot. Virginia, a lot of this was yours. Could I send these notes to you to
Sure.
edit? And
Yeah.
then you could send them back to me and we'll send them out to Duncan and I'll have a copy of what they were and so forth. I'd
Yep.
appreciate that because I don't necessarily get it all right the first time.
Right. Yep. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank
doing-
you.
Okay. And then I think just the agenda next month, couple items I took away, discussion of what topic the housing committee maybe wants to take up, or initiative the housing committee maybe wants to take up based on what we heard tonight. And then do we want to put an invite out to Molly or Miranda to come and chat?
Why don't we wait until we've had that other discussion that you just
Okay.
mentioned?
Yeah, I think that's what we agreed to. So were we just talking about, we were just talking about the agenda, correct? We're
Yes.
on other business. All right, I'm trying to
Yep.
like remember the
All right.
times
Okay.
and so one agenda item was a report back from Virginia on Richmond properties, correct?
Yeah, on the Browns Court parcel.
And I'm sure we'd want to have another update from the planning commission.
Yeah.
Anything else?
And then that discussion of what topics the housing committee would like
Yeah.
to further investigate.
Future housing committee topics. Got it. Okay.
There's also there's a regional planning commission housing convening meeting. It's on the 30th of January from 6 to 8. I will send out to you guys more about that, what it's about, but it's their big housing meeting.
Mhm.
And I don't know if people would be interested in going to it because I don't know exactly what's involved, but maybe I'll add that to your minutes or something, Connie, but I'll
Okay.
send out the information somehow about that meeting. I have it written down, but I didn't write down exactly the way it was going to work or anything.
Could you say the date again?
It's the 30th of January. It's a Monday and it's from
Yeah.
6 to 8. It's the Zoom meeting
Online. Yep.
and it's called the CCRPC Housing Convening.
Oh, housing convenient, got it.
I have that on my calendar. I was going to try and attend.
I
That
don't
on Zoom.
remember exactly. I don't remember how it was arranged or anything, but
I don't remember.
okay, I'll find out. So,
Any other business to discuss?
Not for me.
nope, sounds good.
Okay. Well, guests that joined from the community, thank you for joining this evening.
Yes, thank you so much.
You?
And
Thank you.
feel free to join in the future. And I guess with no other business to discuss, I call the meeting, the January 12th meeting here at 8:59 p.m.
9 it is. Okay, thank
Good
you.
job, Mark.
everybody.
Thank you.
All
Thank you.
Good job. All right, good night, everybody.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank
Yep.
you. Good night.